Good evening, and if you're just tuning in live, you are listening to UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network, and this is the Angel Rock. We're broadcasting to you on 105.3 out of Mississippi and 107.7 out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. And I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. If you haven't been here before, welcome, and also welcome to some of our regular people that hang out with us. Like we got Z Sun Dragon, Michelle Wilfong, Connie Martins, and welcome everybody. So my patient guest, I already told her, got to do a few housekeeping things before we jump into the conversation. So I should tell you about myself and welcome everybody that has been here before too. We appreciate your support. So I'm a Canadian psychic medium, crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner. I'm a spiritual teacher and mentor. I'm also a registered nurse. I'm well versed in the paranormal, not by choice. I always say it found us, not we weren't looking for it. We've shared our story on the Travel Channel's Paranormal Survivor on season 4, episode 9. I'm a budding animal communicator, well versed in near-death experiences, having studied them professionally and personally for over 40 years. And I believe I also had one as a toddler. And I think that's everything I wanted to say about that. So if you guys want to watch us on TV, we do have our own TV channel for the network. You can head over to Roku. You're going to go to the search bar, which is the channel store, and you're going to type in UFO space P as in paranormal. There's a drop down list. We're about the third or fourth one down, and you're looking for UFO space paranormal and United Public Radio. And many of the shows, including this show tonight, broadcast on the channel. So check it out. Now, if you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell all your friends and family about us. This network's been around for 25 plus years, and there really is something for everyone. We stream multiple shows live daily, and when we're not streaming live, the archive server randomly kicks in and picks shows over the last 25 plus years, and we have a variety of hosts with a variety of different shows. We're always adding new content, so check it out. Like, there really is something for everybody. Now, we've got a whole variety here of people. Like I said hi to some. We've also got Silent Diva here. If you want to join in the conversation, I'm going to share how you can do that, because this network does broadcast to every country in the world, and 80% of our audience is audio only. So if you want to join in the conversation, this is how you do it. You can head over to UFO, Paranormal, and United Public Radio on Facebook and YouTube. I'm streaming also to my own YouTube channel, The Angel Rock with Lorilei Potvin. During our conversation, I'll try and pin it also on my Facebook profile under Lorilei Potvin. It's public, so you don't have to send me a friend request to watch or interact. Also, we're streaming to Canada's Most Haunted. And I do want to mention we're streaming to the Angel Rock on Instagram. Now, Instagram does not integrate the comments all in one place. So during the conversation, I'll try and pop back and forth, check who's popped in, and try and address you over there. So I just don't want you to think we're ignoring you, because we're not, I promise. So hang on here. I want to grab our wonderful guest. And you guys, we got to give her a big round of applause, because it's late where she's broadcasting from. She's from the UK. So it is 11 o'clock, I believe, over there. So it's late. So her name is Alison Grey. She's a mother of 4 young boys between the ages of 2 and 11, and has written these meditations in her new book, which is called The Mindful Medium, a practical guide to spirituality. Hang on, I'm scrolling all over, guys. She's written these meditations as inspiration and through experience. She has over 20 years of teaching behind her, 10 of those in speech and language base, where the children suffered more than just speech and communication difficulties, but experienced ADHD, ASD, which I am very familiar with, as my youngest son, who is now an adult, has severe autism, stress, anxiety, abuse, neglect, and many other emotional problems. Working with these children has made her realize just how important children's well-being is, first and foremost. Alongside her teaching profession, she's a Reiki master, Rihani, I haven't got my glasses on, Rahani teacher, /practitioner and is qualified to teach crystal healing. We have so much to talk about tonight. I knew we would. She has also recently set up her own business, Calmer Kids, where she works with children and families to help support children's emotional behavioral needs through various meditations, visualizations, focused work, healing, and affirmations. Welcome, Alison. I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Wow, I did not read that bio actually, because our friend Gavin Davies, who always connects me with wonderful people like yourself through the publishing company he's at in Wales in the UK. I was reading, he had written more of the spiritual type stuff. So it was a little bit, I thought I had read that part. I went to your website and it was kind of picked and chose as I did the write up. And why am I surprised? Like when I see you work with kids with autism, and I have a son with autism.
Oh.
Mhm. So I wanted to ask you, I always ask people, so how did you get into all of this? Like, how did you find out you were a medium?
I think, but it came to me really when I was probably in my late 20s,
Mhm,
30s. But when you look back on it, it was there from when I was young. So, it's not like when you're younger, you realize you're a medium, because I
mhm,
had no idea what medium was. I had
mhm,
nothing. I was brought up in a Christian, well, I say Christian, we were Christian, but we weren't, very religious.
mhm,
So I just had lots of spooky things going on with me as a child. And I was a very empathetic child, very sensitive child, and also quite a creative child. So I loved writing, I loved books, anything to do with fairies, anything to do with elves,
okay.
wizards, witches,
Mhm,
anything like that. I used to always read, loved nature. You'd always find me in the garden outside, up a tree.
mhm,
But I used to feel the energies around people as well. So I was always able to kind of tell whether somebody was happy or sad or grumpy or something
mhm,
like that. And you picked up on other people, other children around you. So I think, I always had that from a very early age. And, my dreams were always really vivid. I've always been able to dream lots. But it wasn't until my grandfather passed when I was 10
mhm,
that I started to get some really weird dreams, because at that point I didn't really think about what happened when you die, because I didn't know of anybody who had died before.
mhm.
So when my grandpa passed over, and it was unexpected,
Oh, I'm
I think
sorry.
I just kind of like went into a bit of a panic, thinking, well, where is he? What happens? What happens when you die? And that's when he kind of came to me in my dream. And I used to get these recurring dreams a lot, and we always used to go and visit him. And he was always around, and I'd be like, Grandpa, where have you been? And he's like, well, I'm always here. Just weird dreams like that, as a child, you don't really understand, until one of the dreams, he sat through me. And that was the really weird experience, because those dreams where you dream, and the dreams where you're dreaming, but you're also awake. And that it's like a psychic dream or a spirit dream is very, very different, isn't it? But at
Very.
10, you can't comprehend this. And I didn't really have the parents. I mean, I've got lovely parents, don't get me wrong, but they didn't really understand what I was trying to say. They didn't really have that experience. So you keep a lot of those things to yourself, don't you, as you're
Yes.
growing up.
Mhm,
But it wasn't until I was like a few years later, like in my teens, that I realized that there were tarot cards and crystals and
mhm.
things that I could get astrology was probably the big one that I could get my hands on. And of a certain age, we didn't have Google, we didn't have any of this, we had to
Right.
have books or and so everything was a little bit limited. So I think it took a while to really understand what was going on.
Mhm. Well, so many things just resonated with me with what you said, because I didn't discover my mediumship. It was a later gift, and I'm permanently off with a back injury. And it was very interesting. I had a varied career before I'd hurt my back, and I worked in the NICU, NICU, neonatal intensive care unit. And there was this little set of twins that were born, a boy and a girl, at 28 weeks gestation. just so tiny, like 500
Yeah.
grams. And I know as nurses, when we worked up there, we always used to pray that if there was going to be a sick baby, please let it be a girl, because boys are just so fragile. Like if we were going to have it, don't get me wrong, we got sick girls too, but it was always boys. And sure enough, the boy twin had such a rough go of it. He ended up with brain bleeds, and which is common with preemies, and something called necrotizing fasciitis, which can affect a child's intestinal system. Long story short, I then went out to work in the community. I was a visiting nurse. And who shows up on my caseload? But this little boy 6 years later, because he's now got cerebral palsy, nonverbal, and in a wheelchair. And, he was stable. Mom just needed some support with personal care and stuff. So I used to run an area and had a bunch what we would call, back in the day, they were RNAs. They're now called RPNs, and much more advanced than the role they were when I was working. And long story short, it was at Christmas time. I'd been off for quite a few years, and I was out Christmas shopping, and I ran into the mom. And I just loved her. We'd really developed a relationship, and she recognized me. And as I went over to hug her, I literally heard, "Tell my mommy I love her."
Oh,
And I instantly knew it was this little one. He was now a teenager when he had passed. And as she hugged me, and she had tears in her eyes, and I won't say his name, but she said his name, and she said, "He had just passed away a few months ago." And I said to her, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry." And I said, "This might sound strange, but before you told me this, I heard, 'Tell my mommy I love her.'" And that weekend, for some reason, being close to Christmas, I ran into a few prior patients' families that I had strange experiences like this. So I
yeah.
started paying more and more attention, and that where it resonated when you said, because my gift came later in life too, and I'm still working on mediumship. But looking back, that, oh my gosh, this explains so much, right?
Yeah, I had I was my aunt's got quite an active house. So funnily enough, scooting forward, when I did start to open up, I went through a breakup with a relationship. So I had like a 4-year relationship, 4.5 years. And it was like a mutual one, it was kind of like going separate ways.
Yeah.
But I was still upset because I'd been with him since from like about 15, 16 years of age. And they suddenly went to me, my mum and my aunt went, "Well, why don't you go and see a clairvoyant?" And I was like, "What's one of those?" I had no idea. So my aunt was always obviously into it when I didn't realise.
Mhm,
But just going back, I was her house was always really, really active, and
mhm,
I was just having a conversation before I came on air really with my mum about how the things go on at my aunt's house, and she had like this dog basket that like lifted up and
mhm.
then fell down because they'd literally just had to have one of their dogs put down. So it was kind
Oh,
of like I feel like, them they're saying the dog
yeah.
is up in the heaven, and and somebody said, "Oh my God, well, this was always like that at her house." And I was like, as a child, I was really scared. I didn't like to go up to the toilet. You never shut the door when you went to the toilet because you were scared you were going to get locked in.
Mhm,
I didn't like sleeping at my cousin's house. I'd rather her sleep at my house, but you forget all of those things. Even at my grandfather's house, my sister and I were just always scared to go upstairs because we just thought we were going to see something, but we didn't know what that was. We never knew because you just didn't have the knowledge back then until I was a little bit older and
I
realised that,
agree. Yeah,
yeah.
I agree because, I've told this story quite a few times, but we had moved into a new home in our previous home. So this would have been back, I'm going to be 59, actually a month today in August. And I was about 3 or 4 years old. And I remember when we moved into this home, my parents were renovating. And I remember my mom going on and on about having to steam off 37 layers of wallpaper to get down to the plaster. That's how old this house was. And my first paranormal experience happened in that house that I remember very clearly. So when we moved to our new home, it had been built from the ground up. Nobody had lived there before. And, you know, we were all excited, brand new home. And I was about 7 turning 8. And for about 4 to 6 months or so, every night I would wake up at 3 a.m. unable to breathe. Couldn't take a
Yeah.
breath in, couldn't take a breath out. There was no, I know you don't call it 911. Is it 111 over there
Yeah,
for,
or 999, yeah.
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 So my dad would scoop me up, bring me in the car. I'm not breathing. As soon as he got about a block away, I'd start breathing. And so they diagnosed me with asthma, gave me medication for a month, but it just seemed to stop. But I can tell you, being a nurse, it was not asthma. Like I could not literally get anything in or anything out. It was terrible.
Like a paralyzation.
Yeah, but I could walk, like, because
Yeah.
I was terrified to go to sleep. And my parents too. My father was a little bit more open to this than my mother, because his mother was very intuitive. She knew the moment. My grandmother always say, good French, Canadian, Roman Catholic family, was pregnant every year for 25 years, apparently, and ended up with 17 children. I
Oh
can't
my
even imagine.
goodness.
So she knew when her third eldest son died, she literally, they were waiting for him to come home for dinner and he hadn't. And she stood up and yelled, he's gone. And the police came by about an hour and a half, 2 hours later. It was a traffic accident. So they sort of knew exactly when it had happened. So,
Yeah.
but I hear what you're saying. Like, where do you go to talk to somebody about this? Like, I know people who, when they did open their mouths about it as young children or teenagers, their parents didn't know what to do with them. They were ending
Mm.
up in psych hospitals and stuff.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, you hear those stories. So I always had a present standing in my bedroom at night, and I just thought it was like a dark figure. I mean, I now know that that's a spirit guide that was watching over me, but at the time, it used to scare me, and I used to hide under the bed, and I didn't want to see anything, and I'd go up to my mum and dad, and because they were in like a loft room.
Hmm.
And they would be like, don't be silly, go back to sleep, go back to sleep. There's nobody here. There's nobody in the house, but I felt it. And there was a time when I was on the house on my own. Literally, I was about 11, 12, and I just started what we call secondary school.
Yep.
And my mum had gone back to work at this point, and my
Mhm.
sister was supposed to be at
Right.
home at the same time that I was, but she never was. So I let myself in, and we just had the dog and the cat, but the dog was sitting next to me, and I just came in, made myself a drink, sat in front of the TV, and I could hear somebody walking down the steps. So your first thought is there's somebody in the house.
Mm-hmm.
That's your first thought, that you got an intruder. So I look at the dog looks at me, we're both a bit shocked. I look at the stairs, nobody's there. And I thought, that's weird. And I bolted it out the back door and sat in the garden until my sister came home. Because I was so scared. But people just say, oh, it's your imagination, it's this, that, the other. But these things are real, and you don't make them up, do you?
No, you don't. And the fact, like I said, I'm going to be 59 years old, and I very vividly remember, like, it was a rainy night when I was between 3 and 4 in this old house, and it would have been back in the late 60s, early 70s, and the bedroom was all these, I remember the purple flowers and wild whatever, right? But on the curtains, they were very gauzy. They didn't have the type of curtains that you have now. And
Yeah.
I've always never really liked rain or thunderstorms. I never have, ever, ever. And I know why now.
Yeah.
Again, goosebumps, and it's not cold here, as I'm telling you. So, I've told this story on here a few times. So I was in bed. I don't know what time it was. It was dark. Everybody was in bed at night, and it was raining and thundering, and the wind was howling. And through my curtains, it looked like there was this tree with branches hitting the window. And all I remember thinking is, oh, no, 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 no. And I wanted to run to my parents' room, but I knew that I would probably get a good swat on the behind for waking my mother up over a storm. So I was laying there. I kid you not, I remember this vividly. Those tree branches turned almost into claws, and it started going down the window. And I was hiding under my covers going, oh, please don't hurt
Oh
me.
no.
Something pinched me, right, not on my
Really?
bottom, but right up where your belt would be. I
Yeah.
have never forgotten that, ever.
Yes. I don't think I've had anything as scary as that. I mean, I've had like cats or animals jumping on the bed, And then thinking, oh, the cat's on the bed. Then thinking, no, actually, the cat's not here. The cat, there's nobody on my bed. So, often feeling that imprint on your bed. So I've had lots of, music suddenly come in and the TV switching on and off, lots of things like that, but nothing as scary as that. I think that would have
I've
really...
had lots of scary, and even though I like skulls and things like that, I'm not into dark things. Like when you're talking about the fairies as a young child, I put up a fairy garden every summer, and I love unicorns and like things like that. I don't gravitate. I hate horror movies or anything dark like that. But I think, you know what? I often say like the experience we had in our previous home, because that's what got me on. I was just starting on the spiritual path. And I won't get into it, but one of the things if I'm doing a talk or something, I'll call it what do tattoos and angel cards have to do with each other? Nothing. But by getting my first tattoo, after, I won't tell a long story on here, but I ended up connecting with someone working there who picked up that I had something about me and handed me a box of angel cards. And I said, what do I do with this? She goes, you'll know. And I said, well, when do you want them back? You'll know. That's what kind of opened it wide open. But I will say, if I hadn't had our extreme paranormal experience, I don't think I'd be doing what I was doing today.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? I was really gravitated with the tarot cards because I loved the images and I loved the pictures and they just fascinated me, and I just knew I needed some. Didn't know how to read them. And then I heard somewhere, or I read somewhere, that you shouldn't buy your own. It was bad luck or something to buy. I don't believe that anymore, but at the time I did. So I bought them for my mum. And she was like, oh,
look, Mum, look what I bought you.
Look what I bought you, Mum. And she was just like, oh, eventually she said, you have them. I was like, brilliant, and I just taught myself because I didn't really know. And I did this, and I went into like teaching. I became a teacher, a special needs teacher, but it was always there, and I think I went to one lady, like one medium, and she recognized it in me and invited me to do something, but I wasn't really ready. And it wasn't until, I used to have this thing, I don't know whether you did as a child, where I used to like rise out of my body. I didn't fully go out. I didn't kind of like astral travel, but I could feel myself coming out, and it used to scare me. And so I kind of like pulled myself back down. And that happened when I was pregnant with my first child. But by the time I had my second one, which was literally 14 months later, we won't go into that. And
my brother and I are 15 months apart. So
like having twins.
Irish twins, don't they call it that? Well, 13 months apart, I think it's Irish twins, they call it.
But it was while I was with him, and he was like me. So my mum said to me that when I was born, the nurses, the midwife, looked at me and said, look at her eyes, she's been here before. I could tell that she's already been here before. She knows, she's arrived home again, kind of thing. And I felt like that with my son. So I feel like he was also my catalyst for awakening me further than I already was. And I used to like hold him, feed him, nurse him. I'd get the cigarette smells, I'd hear things. And in the end, I thought, I need to go and find somebody that will help me with this. I can really fully understand it. And I think that's when my journey started. So I was about 33 when it all kind of really started for me, even though I'd been kind of dabbling, if you like, since a teenager.
I didn't rise out of my body, but I now know I would be put to bed at night, and I've always been a night person, always. And so I wasn't ready to go to sleep. So it wasn't an imaginary friend. It was one of my main guides that I would have many conversations with, many. She told me that I was going to have 3 boys because I asked her about children. Then when I was 16, I was always told that I'd never be able to have kids. So my eldest, it was his birthday yesterday. He just turned 29. I always, and the names I kept hearing were Jordan, Justin, and Jared. I don't even know if I like the name Jared, but that's what I heard. So I wanted to call my first son Jordan. And my ex-husband was a big fan of the X-Men. And this name was not common 29 years ago. The only thing he liked was Wolverine, Logan. So my oldest son is named after the Wolverine, Logan. My middle child, though, why am I saying middle child? I only have two, but I go explain why. Maybe that just came out of my mouth. My youngest child is 26. His name is Justin, and Michael after Archangel Michael. And then
Mm.
I got pregnant at 50, believe it or not, with my partner I've been with for 15 years, and I had a miscarriage.
Oh,
But I was always like, when I started working on classes and things like that, I never got to see the person, because the person I worked with was in Los Angeles, my mentor. We just
mm.
got to talk for 30 seconds. And I can't tell you how many fellow students would pick up this little boy. They would describe him. So
Oh,
I think I really was meant to have three children, and I had
yeah.
two. Hmm. Hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
So.
I had a miscarriage as well. I've had a couple, and I feel like they're all my girls because I've got four boys,
Mhm.
and I know that my first one that I lost was a girl because she's always around and people pick up on her.
Mhm.
Um, and I also felt that between my third one and my fourth one, I lost one,
Oh.
and I was having my miscarriage, and I'd sort of said to my husband, "Look, go to my mum's because I wanted just to do it on my own. I just felt I needed to do it on my own." And I saw my nan come into the room, and she was
Oh.
carrying the baby, and that's when I knew
Oh.
we'd gone. But then I feel like it's come back. You see, so I feel like
I've heard stories about
yeah,
that. I
yeah,
just told this story. I think it might have been on last Thursday night. Maybe it was someone I talked to so many people. So I don't know if it was privately or on air, but I'm really fascinated, especially by children who remember their past lives and they
yeah,
can actually prove it. Like go
yeah,
back and research it, what
yeah.
have you. And there was one story, it's such a terrible name for the show that was on. It was called The Ghost Inside My Child. And there's a little guy on there. The mom had had numerous miscarriages. So when she finally got pregnant and carried the baby to term, when the little guy was about 3 and he could speak, he kept talking about where he'd come from and some of his previous lives. And he kept saying, I was so afraid, Mommy. I was so afraid. I'm so glad I decided to stay this time. I was brave enough this time. And through enough conversations, it
Wow,
was, from what this child was saying, it was the same soul that she was getting pregnant with, but he
amazing.
would he would, for whatever reason, maybe he's got a full, difficult life ahead of him. I don't know. I don't think there was any follow-up, but he was not ready. He wasn't ready.
Yes.
Mhm.
I believe that, and I think sometimes I feel that it's not just the child that's not ready. Sometimes it's the parents or the mum or so, whatever the circumstances are. Perhaps I always feel like perhaps they're too eager to come down, and they
Mhm.
have to kind of wait. But it was really fun because I had three children. I should have felt done, shouldn't I? I should have thought, do you know what, three boys is enough. But I still felt that there was one there. I just still
Mhm.
felt that, and I used to hear like mummy. And I'd like go up and check the children, and
Mhm.
they were all asleep. And I'd be like, that's coming from somewhere, and I always knew that I was going to be pregnant soon if I heard the mummy.
I was gonna, if I could have, I would have had 12 kids. I adore
Yeah.
children. You are a very special person, and I'm going to say that to you. Having
Oh,
worked with some very special teachers over the years who have worked with my son. So my heart goes out to you, and I say
thank
thank you for the
you.
work that you do. I
Oh,
really
thank
mean that.
you. Thank
Mhm.
you. I love, I think for me, part of this journey is working with children, is working with the parents. And for me, it's about helping everybody to understand who they are, because some children, like the children that I've worked with, haven't had the expression, they haven't had the communication, they haven't had the language.
And everybody deserves a
Everybody
communication
does.
system.
Yes.
Everybody. People
Yeah.
don't understand that. Like, I'm going to add very quickly, I know you were telling a story, but just to sort of support what you were saying. I used to go to biannual conferences in Toronto, and Temple Grandin was speaking at it. And for people who may not know who she is, she's very well known in the autism community, older lady with a PhD, but she was nonverbal. She had every symptom of autism in the 50s. Her mom was was told to institutionalize. Her mother was a teacher, and she said, no, I can't do that. And now Temple, she's actually a really incredible bridge, I think, for parents, especially a newly diagnosed child, to see from where Temple came from to where she is now. But the reason I bring it up, she was interviewing a gentleman by the name of Tito, a teenager over in India. And his mother did, it's a controversial technique, but it's called assistive typing, to be able to type at the computer to communicate.
Yeah.
And I think there was no doubt in this because we watched it live. And I remember Temple saying, and if you saw this gentleman, anybody would think there's nothing going on there.
Yeah.
Like no eye contact, but swaying, hands flicking, not being able, like his mother had to keep directing him to come sit back down, please. And when Temple said to him, Tito, what would have happened had your mother not kept working with you to be able to utilize the keyboard to communicate? And his exact words were, I would have been a vegetable. There wasn't a dry room, eye in the room. So I think it is so vitally important for anybody who can't communicate. Sorry, and I know you were saying why as well, that you feel this way.
No, I definitely, everybody deserves that voice. Everybody deserves, to be able to be who they are. I feel that we're all here for a reason. And, it's so important. So I have a conversation, I often have this conversation, I had it today, that I don't believe in the term naughty children. I just don't.
I don't either. I was just thinking, you're reading my mind. I say this all the time, and especially with the school, behavior does not happen out of the blue. It's up to us when someone is not able to communicate it, to be the detective, to understand what happened. Because especially children don't come in being hateful or violent or anything like that. There's a reason.
There's an emotional need behind that. And it's, it's giving them the space to understand that and to develop the strategies and to develop, and to understand what's going on with them and that how they can change and how they can not necessarily change, but how they can kind of be at peace with themselves, because a lot of the children are angry with themselves, aren't they? They're not just angry with the world, but, and giving them that space.
Or not being able to tell somebody what you want. So you end up developing strategies that get you what you want and what you need. Role to be able to support parents too is to better bridge that communication between parent and child, as well as to give the child some autonomy to be able to communicate their needs in a much more acceptable way than saying being, having an emotional outburst or being physically aggressive or whatever that could be, what their coping system is. I'm going to read a comment here. Just going to go back. We got a few other people. I told you we had at least one person from England over here. Julie Evans.
Lovely.
Says, have been told a few times I have a daughter in the spirit world. We've got Diane Brighton, Julie Jean Bassett. I always give her a shout out. She's amazing. She's an incredible animal communicator. She's helped me with some of my animals, and I've taken my course with her. She's also an incredible shamanic practitioner. So you guys, if you're looking for someone to work with different healing modalities or work with your animals, check out Julie Jean Bassett. So she said hi. Now Contessa Martins, or Connie, says, I didn't want to, I'm not going to highlight that's hiding our faces, sorry. I worked in a cancer center and got very attached to one of our very young patients. I had a dream that he came to visit me at a beach with his yellow pail and blue plastic shovel. I was so happy to see him and told him that he looked great and his blonde hair had grown in. He told me that he came to say goodbye. The next morning at work, the pediatric nurse came to tell me that he had passed away during the night. I feel he came to say goodbye to me as we were very close. I think you're right, Connie. I think you're right.
Absolutely. That, I had an experience with my grandma, and I was, again, it was after I had just had my first child, and we were in this cottage, and we were sleeping at night. So it was, I don't know, it might have been about 12:30, 1 o'clock. I can't really remember the time, but there was this almighty crash, and we flew downstairs to find all my cookery books scattered all in the kitchen. And I'd got a little clock that was, I think, from that side of the family. So I think it might have been my nan's dad or something like that. I can't remember who the clock is. But it wasn't broken. It wasn't broken. And it was like, how weird that all of these things had come crashing down. But this clock, this little clock, and it was really made like of plywood, I think, the wood that was.
So it should have broken.
It should have broken, should have smashed, and it hadn't. And I knew that my nan was ill, and I knew my nan didn't have long. And I kind of said, Nan's gone. She's definitely gone. That is a sign Nan's gone. So I woke up in the morning and I rang my mum, and she was like, no, she's not. She's still here. And I thought, well, then that was weird, because what was all that about? That very night, she passed at the same time that those books crashed, but like a day later, 24 hours later. And so I know that that was my grandfather preparing me that he was about to take my nan.
Aww.
Absolutely. So I think they do come to tell us. They do come to, not to warn us, but they do come back, and they come back in our dreams, don't they? Those spirit dreams are so beautiful when they happen, because we know that they're coming to visit us.
I always say, though, that especially when we're grieving, I worked in palliative care quite a bit in the community. I did a lot of technical stuff, and I love that kind of stuff. But the thing that was life-changing for me was really the palliative care, and seeing, say, a patient that was very well, starting chemo, terminal diagnosis, and following them through, right? You just learn so much about a person and what have you. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I forgot. I'm losing my train of thought now as I'm talking. It'll come back. I'm sorry. I'm hearing spirit, and then I'm trying to think what I'm going to say to you. Most people know that that's going to happen. Hi, Mish. Mish is over in Australia. It's early Tuesday morning over there, so thanks for joining us. We got Jennifer M here too. She says hello, all.
Hello.
No, what was that? It was the reason why I was going to tell you about the palliative care. What did you say just before I said that? It'll remind me. So
about them coming back and visiting us, and to let us know that they're on their way, they're transitioning.
I have seen that. I've seen that with patients. Sometimes, again, like you say, the moment they are, and you're right. It's not a warning, but it's almost it's like a premonition in a way of preparing you that this is coming very, very soon, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to figure out what that means, that's the beautiful part about it. So what I just seen this, because I don't always use them, but I seen Gavin, you just shared with Gavin some of the things to talk about getting into your book. I got to ask you about this because I'm really, really curious. You said, I joined a healing circle and learned ways to bring healing energy and to our aura. But you said then it goes on a little bit further, and it says, first time I stood up in a circle and made a link to the spirit world was horrifying. Would you be comfortable sharing that? Like, what's behind? I'm curious. I didn't read the rest of it. It just stood out. So I want to hear what you have to say.
Because I think for me, it was, I started off in a development circle that was massive. I think there was like 20 people there. And it was the first time I'd kind of done this. So I ended up being quite comfortable with the healing, because I felt like I knew what I was doing. And although I'm a teacher, and although I can stand up in front of a whole class, and I can stand up in front of parents and do a whole school assembly, this was like really, really scary, because you're trying to describe something that you don't really have 100% sure that this is what you're doing, because you often think it's in your own head, don't you? And so I'm standing up here trying to describe this person that's standing here, that I'm thinking, am I making it up or am I not making it up? And for me, that was horrifying, because I'm quite a practical person. I'm a very down-to-earth person. And although I have a total trust in the spirit world now, at that point, unless I could see, feel, hear, I just wasn't sure. So for me, the experience of developing was quite hard. And I remember my tutor used to say to me, Alison, your guides, they're knocking their heads against the brick wall, because you've got to just trust.
Well, that's true. That's
true.
But you know what? With mediumship coming later, like you asked me to give you psychic advice on anything else, yes, I could do it like the back of my hand. I'm something which is very clairaudient. Some people aren't in the spiritual community that are listening. I should tell them that means you hear. No, you don't hear voices, or I don't anyways. I hear what I would describe as in the mind's eye. But I hear what you're saying, and with mediumship, that was such a shock for me. because I do speak 3 languages, but what was so shocking to me, I was expecting to hear like I hear my guides and angels and the ascended masters. Oh, no, 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 no. You never know what you're going to get. Sometimes you could see, sometimes you could feel, sometimes you would smell, sometimes you would hear, sometimes they'd show you symbols, sometimes, you know, and it went on and on. And then the worst part for me in the beginning, and I've gotten better at it, is when you do a reading or you work with somebody and you share something and they say, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. No, absolutely not. No, I don't know what you're talking about. And then they, you know, a day or two goes by and they're talking to a family member or somebody, and that person, they're telling them about the reading. The person goes, oh, yeah, your nan used to do that. Yeah, absolutely. And drove a car like blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, but it's hard to get past, like, exactly for the reasons you shared, because you have to be concrete and you've got to trust, like you really have to trust.
Really trust. Yeah. I did a reading for my neighbour's sister, and I've never read for my neighbour before. But she knew that I was into this, and her sister was into it. So she said, you know, she's got a few things going on. Can she come for a reading? So anyway, cut a long story short, I was giving this lady a reading, and she could take most of the things I was saying. So we were doing well. And I said, oh, I've got this young lady coming in, and I gave her an S initial. Couldn't quite hear her name, but I knew that it began with an S. And I said to her, I said, you know, I think, you know, she had like cancer. I said, she's showing me. I said, I don't know whether she lost her hair or not, but my sign for cancer is somebody that's got like a headscarf. And she said, no, can't understand it. I said, well, she'd be about your age. I said, so, you know, she's got to be somebody close. And I could see her standing here. She couldn't take it whatsoever. And then my neighbour came back and she went, oh, that was our sister, Sally, and she died of skin cancer. And I was just like, I can't believe she didn't recognise her own sister.
But that happens. And like I tell people, if anybody tells you in this field, well, really any field, that they're 100% always right, run, because we're human beings and we're not always, plus when we're feeling, and especially if you've got a lot of loved ones around and you're not necessarily seeing them, but you're feeling them or whatever it is, right? You could be picking up, or there could be a friend popping in too, or whoever, right? So I always tell people that. I'll tell them sometimes I'll get a name, sometimes I won't. Sometimes they'll show me how they've passed, sometimes they won't. So I kind of just go with the flow. And my thing I tell myself, and it's taken a while to learn to trust, is that we connect with people for a reason. This person has connected with you for a reason to work together. So there's something that's hopefully healing is coming out of it. Otherwise, maybe there's something for me to learn or something. So that's what I have to always tell myself. That's what helped with the trust. I do want to bring this up because Kevin, thank you. Kevin, Z Sun Dragon. I lost my train of thought back there. We were talking about dreams, I remembered, because he said there will always be, oh, sorry, I went too far ahead here. You guys are commenting. I see your questions. Hang on. He said in dreams, sorry, Kevin, it's amazing how they come through, isn't it? That's where I was going with this, is that we're, you know, grieving is a normal, natural human process. It naturally lowers your vibration or your energy. And when we're dealing with across the veil, whatever people, I call it going back home, especially if you're working with angels and guides, right? They're vibrating at a higher energy. So sometimes it's hard for people when their loved one has passed to be able to feel them or connect and their loved ones right there. So that's the beautiful thing. Big, long story. I was going to say with dreams, I always say that's when we're most open. So I find that's the easiest way for our loved ones to connect. Do you find that as well?
Absolutely, because as you say, you know, our conscious brain gets in the way. So when we're drifting off to sleep or when we're waking up to sleep, it's so much easier for them to sift through our treacle, if you like, in our minds, and they can connect. But I'd also like to say that, you know, sometimes people expect like a spirit dream very quickly after someone's passed, and that won't always happen because we have to be ready. And if our grief is too much, it's going to be too hard for us to see. you know.
Yeah.
So they might come in 6 months later, they might come in a year later. It doesn't mean you're not going to get the signs that they're there. It doesn't mean that they're not around us. It just means that they're going to choose the right time, that emotionally we're strong enough to receive them.
Agreed 100%. The other thing I have found, we have to be careful the words we use here on YouTube, but somebody maybe that has unalived themselves, a terrible way to describe it, and I apologize to anybody the way it's described. I kind of got to go with YouTube's guidelines here. I have found that sometimes, not always, but sometimes it does take more time to connect with that person. And from what Spirit's shown me, is they really need a lot of healing. And the way I look at it is the amount of pain somebody has to be in that state, right? I think they need special healings. Not everybody, but some
Yeah,
people need a lot of healing on the other side too.
definitely. There's always healing going on the other side,
Mm-hmm.
particularly, as you say, if it's tragic or if it's very, very quick.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as you know, you worked in palliative care, you know, as you know, that as people are getting sicker, perhaps they're transitioning, you know, it's taken a while. But for sudden passing, like my father was a sudden pass,
Oh, I'm
that was
sorry.
kind of like, wow, you know. And so it's going to take healing for everybody to kind of understand that.
And some spirits, and I have run into this before, it's not common, but it does happen when it's very quick and unanticipated. Some people don't even realize
Their
that they're
past.
no longer in their body anymore
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Michelle has a question. She says, "Do you always hear English or other languages?" I think it's a great question because
Oh, it's
everybody
a great
has a different
question.
answer. So what's your answer? And then I'll share mine.
So for me, yes, I always hear English. Always.
Mm,
I'm not very good with languages,
mhm,
so I just don't think I have the ear for it. So I wouldn't be able to understand them. They would have to come through with English for me to understand it. But what is interesting is that when I read for people that have got from a different country, say, some of the names are really hard, aren't they, to kind of hold on to? So you kind of get the sound of a name,
mhm,
but you don't always get the full name
mhm,
because it's not a name that I'm familiar with.
mhm.
And that has to, as you know, with mediumship, you have your like your little dictionary and your dialect. So you have to have your own knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and that's what they tap into. So if it's foreign to me, I'm not going to be able to express it or understand it. So you know, there's always that hard barrier as well. So you can get something similar, but you can't always get it perfectly, I think,
The
particularly
other
men.
thing I find too, and I always say, way back in the day when I started this pursuit, I was right there. I tell people all the time too, when am I going to open my third eye? When am I going to, hear my angels' names and guides' names and stuff? But since I'm at the point that I am now and have been for many years, from what Spirit's shown me, they don't use names on the other side. They know each other energetically, and you really are
Absolutely.
part of each other. So they use names because they understand that us as human beings need
The
names.
evidence.
For
Yeah.
myself, I hear in English. I do speak French and some Spanish, but
Wow.
the beautiful thing I think is we are limitless on the other side, right?
Mm.
Especially, I believe we've all had, not everybody, but a lot of us have had many past lives. So, spirit, especially if they're coming through to connect with a loved one, or maybe it's just a belief I hold that they're coming through basically to try and facilitate some sort of healing, so they're going to do it in the best way possible. I always say, I'm just the male person. That's all I
Yeah,
am, right? So they're going
absolutely.
to communicate in the best way possible, I believe, going through the male person or male carrier to deliver the messages that are needed for the loved one on the other side. So maybe it's just my belief system, but I don't.
No, that's totally. And I think, you know, on the same thread that there's a medium for everybody. So
Yes.
my experiences are very different, perhaps, than to yours. So,
I'm
you know,
so
whoever
glad you said that. Yes, because
yeah,
we all work differently.
we all work differently. We've all got different experiences.
Mhm,
So, you know, if I can't tap into what they need because I'm unfamiliar with it,
mhm.
they, you know, spirit people direct their loved ones to a medium that has that knowledge, has that understanding.
Exactly kind of what I said, right? So we hold the
Mm.
belief Like,
Yeah.
and it helps to build your confidence to knowing what we know, and we all, I believe, have these abilities. Are we all going to be graded and everyone's going to be a medium? Not necessarily, but we all have an intuitive side. Same
Yeah.
thing, I also believe that all children can see spirit, as can pets and animals. But where I was going with that is kind of what I said earlier, that I have to tell myself that I am connecting with this person. They have sought me out to work with me because, and I don't mean to make that sound egotistical, is that's not where I'm coming from for anyone listening, but there's a reason, right? Like just sort of what you said. So spirit directs the
Yeah.
person to work with the person.
And I do believe it's a healing. Definitely. I'd like to think that anybody that's left my room or left my reading, my guidance, has come away with an understanding, a love, a healing, a something. They've got something from it. It's not about me just telling people what I know. It's about helping and developing or finding that clarity, so that's the healing within, and the reassurance that our loved ones have passed over, are still around, and they are still watching us as we go about our daily
And
lives.
they are healthy and fine. Healthy and fine.
Absolutely, that they are happy. Yeah.
The other thing I find a lot too is a lot of people, and I mean, from a human perspective, we would, right? Like maybe we had an argument with a person and we weren't able to rectify that before they passed or whatever. And to be able to let them know that although you could discuss the situation that happened, they're
Yeah.
not harboring anger or anything because it's just love. Mm-hmm.
It is just, and also if for example, you've raced to the hospital, you've raced somewhere, and you've missed the passing. It's that understanding that perhaps you weren't meant to be there. They wanted
All
the
the time.
passing there. I always say that about my dad. My dad passed in a car. I mean, nobody else got hurt, but his heart gave out, and me and my sister and my mum, we all went, do you know what? Dad wouldn't have wanted to be ill, and Dad wouldn't want to have upset us. So it was kind of like he did the best thing for us. Does that make sense? It's kind of, so I think they choose their passing. I believe we choose our passing, and so therefore there's no guilt that my dad was on his own, or there's no guilt that somebody had missed it, because actually maybe you weren't meant to be there. Some people are, some people aren't.
I've said that many times to people, especially when I was working on the floor and you would have palliative people, and the loved one would be there day and night, day and night, day and night. And finally they were so exhausted, they'd say, I'm just going to leave to just run home, grab a quick shower, and I'll be back. And then the minute they leave, the person goes back home, as I call it. And then, you end up having a conversation with them on the floor. And, maybe when they get back and they're devastated, and if they're open to it, it'd be very feeling, obviously, to see if somebody would be open to hearing that. But maybe that was the way your loved one wanted it, I say to them. I know it is, but I'm not going to say I know that's what your loved one wanted. But I usually say maybe that's what they wanted, or even if you haven't made it in time, maybe they just wanted you to have the memory of them healthy and who they were before they got ill.
And again, that's the healing for them, so that they're not carrying around that guilt, that's prolonging their grief, perhaps because they're holding on to that. I should have done this, and I should have. Sometimes, it's not how it's meant to be, and that's what they sometimes come through to reassure us.
Well, let's talk about your book. Do you want to remind people the title? And I want to hear all about it and why you wrote it. Is this your first book? I don't think it is it, Alison? You've written other books.
No, I have written one linked into my Karma Kids that is about the meditations and helping parents really to, it's called Calm and Relax with Monkey and Me, and it's a book that I put a whole load. Well, the monkey part is because my children all had their little toy, and they all had like a monkey. It was like their comfort toy, and so for me, this monkey went on the meditations with them to kind of
I love that.
So that was my first book. It was only a small book, but it was a little bit about how children have anxiety, or, some children suffer from anxiety or stress, and, how they can learn how to feel a little bit calmer and a little bit more relaxed and with the meditation. So that was my first book. But my second book, the book that I'm talking about today, is The Mindful Medium. And for me, that's the book that I wish really I had when I was opening up, so that I could read somebody else's story and have that focal point that I'm not weird, I'm not going mad, and this is, somebody else's experiences. So the first part is written really in three parts. So the first part is about my journey and how I kind of, from like, as a child all the way up to when I first started to join my circles and develop. And then the middle part is like all the things that I've learned along the way. So I've had many teachers, many wonderful teachers. I haven't just had the one that's taught me everything. So I've had healing teachers, I've had development teachers, crystal healers, I've had loads of different people, like past life regressionists. And so all of the things that I've learned along the way, I've put into like a practical guide, really, like little tips, or this is how you can tap into this, or this is my understanding. And then the last part is the mindful medium part. It's that mindfulness, it's the meditations, and learning to kind of like be still and to connect to ourselves.
So do you want to explain, like I say, we don't always have people listening that know what mindfulness is. So what is, I know what it is, and there may be people in the chat, but to you, and there's no right or wrong answer, but to you, what is mindfulness?
So mindfulness for me is about connecting into yourself. And it's about stilling the mind, stopping it from racing. So, we always say about being the past, the present, the future, and how we kind of like, sometimes we hold on to the past, sometimes we look to the future, and it doesn't kind of always make us happy. But in the present, and knowing that we are here and now and experiencing life right now, that is when we've become grounded and more earthed. And that's when we can find the joy in our life, rather than constantly worrying. So for me, mindfulness are different techniques and different ways of feeling grounded, feeling connected, whether that's meditation, walking in nature, or healing. It's just things that are connecting us to who we are and beginning to understand who we are, because I feel that's when we're closest to our higher self, and that's when we're closest to our guides, our angels, and our loved ones, and we can get their understanding and feel their love, really.
I agree 100%. And I always say, when asking spirit if there was such a thing, that we could have an ideal scenario where a human being was in perfect balance, what they showed me was being perfectly grounded right into the earth, running that energy through all of our energy centers, or chakras, or chakras, call it that, right through the crown and higher chakras to source, or a home, heaven, universe, whatever your belief system is. Right. And then we'd have the energy perfectly balanced. As much as there was, if we wanted to use light, there would have to also be dark, or the yin and the yang. That would be the perfect balance, right? Because that's the planet that we're on, the 3D existence. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, whenever I open up, I always visualize roots coming out from the soles of my feet and grounded and earthing. And then it's like a tree, I'm pulling up the energy, and then I'm opening up and connecting. I call it source as well, source or the divine. And you know what? It spent a long time. So I think, and I don't know whether other people resonate with this, but when I first started, all you want to do is to open your third eye, open your crown, you want all the wisdom, And I just say to all my students now, what is the point in that? You have to ground, because unless you're grounded, you can't fully open up all your chakra systems. You have to be connected. So it has to be with the earth, so that you can open up.
But it's that's the thing when you first start this, right? Like you feel a call, you feel a pull, you feel like there's got to be something more. And why am I here? You usually run into students and people, right? And I remember my own journey, as I'm sure you remember yours. Like you said, you shared some of that in the book. So and then you hear other people saying about the third eye, you've got to open the third eye, and then they get into the pineal or pineal gland, and that's all there is. And you are absolutely right, because I need to make a video because people have no idea of what crystal Reiki is here. You have access to so many incredible sources over in the UK than we do, I find, on this side of the pond, because I feel you guys have always been a little bit more open and advanced with the culture and what versus on this side here. It's coming, right?
Yes.
So with crystal Reiki, how I do it, I have 15 symbols that I use specifically for crystal Reiki. I check people's chakras, or however people say it, with the pendulum. You don't need to be in front of me. And I'm checking to see if they're balanced, overbalanced, or perfect, basically. And then the ones that are out of alignment, then I intuitively use different crystals working with your team. I'm working like your team on the other side and my team, and then directing energy in if it's needed, as well as with the symbols are out. And then after they're all balanced, I check. Then the reason I'm saying this for people listening, sorry if I'm talking your ear off. And then I check their aura or their energy field for cracks and holes and what have you. And then after we're done, I check it again to make sure it's intact. And then I ground their energy, right? I usually walk them through it to make it hold. So, when people hear crystal Reiki, they have no idea what it is. So
quite involved. It is definitely involved. But you're right, because, if we're focusing on one chakra, like the third eye, like the crown, or any of the higher chakras, the moment you've got one that's open more than the others, you become out of balance.
You're out of balance.
So you have to have them all aligned for them to be working in harmony to find that balance. So, it does. I think it took me a long time to kind of understand that.
Me too.
Well, I'd be like, yeah, great, my third eye's open. Yes, but you're not grounded. So you're floating up here and you're not making the great decisions, because I love being in earth, I love being in nature. So for me now, grounding is the best thing that I do. For me, it's like the most important thing. And then I can open everything up.
And it is. That's the first thing we need.
Because we're human as well. We have to have a human existence. So,
well, I think we also have to look at, I am working on, and I keep promising people it's coming. Time just seems to be speeding up, I swear. And is working on a teaching class for people newly into spirituality. I was always hung up too on what do I put in it? Like, you could have this big, long list. And one of my regular clients, I just love her. I love all my clients. But the thing is, she had asked me, when is the course coming? And I said, well, I'm still trying to decide what to put in there. We were chit-chatting, and she said, why don't you just start with the basics and the beginner? And it was like a light bulb went on. I went, holy cow, why didn't I think of that? So that's what we're working on. But, we're speaking the same language here, like going to a place of joy. I was explaining this to a very close friend of mine. I have 3 other very good friends. Well, the fourth one, not so. She's just sort of joined us. One of them is from the UK, married a Canadian, and now lives in Mexico. The other one lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and the fourth one lives in Australia. And we connect through spirit and say, we don't think we're the be all to the end all. That's not what we're saying here. There's hundreds of thousands of people doing this type of work, but say we need energy healing being sent out or whatever. We work with spirit and they give us that kind of stuff. So I was saying to my friend that's in Atlanta the other day, because she is just so connected to music, so connected. Like she so connects with the lyrics, the sound. And for her, I think that's her window or key into connecting to spirit. And I really try to feel, I feel through her what she's feeling, not experiencing it, but having that empathy for the feelings, because sometimes it'll bring her to tears. It's so beautiful for her. And I finally had it the other night. I said, just how you feel about music. For me, it's creation and creativity. Like I said, most of my work with spirit is done at night. And I love resin and sculpting and creating. So it
Yeah.
gets the mind busy. So it opens up, if people want to
Yeah.
call it subconscious, your higher self. What do
Yeah.
you find you use too? You're probably so busy with working your regular job and everything else and for children. My
Yeah, I mean, I don't work in schools anymore, so I yeah. So, but I do work with Karma Kids, so I do work with specific children. I
Mhm.
think for me, it's writing. That's what I love
Oh,
doing.
lots of people
So,
do.
yeah, so all my meditations I write myself. I love just putting them all in and just writing them
Do you think
all
you
down.
channel them, or do you feel they come with you or in concert with
Yeah,
spirit?
it's really interesting because I do like a meditation group every week,
Okay.
and everyone's like, well, you should be doing the meditation as well. And I'm like, but as I'm speaking it, I'm channeling it. And
Mhm.
so therefore I'm experiencing it as I'm saying it. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? So I feel
100%.
like, so whenever I'm writing, I'm feeling it. And
Mhm.
when my other grandfather died, when I was 18, this is the nan that I was talking about earlier, when her husband died, I suddenly started writing poetry, and I knew these
Oh,
poems
wow.
weren't for me. Yeah, they weren't my poems, so I gave them all to my nan. I was like, these are from Grandpa.
Oh, that's what a beautiful
And
gift.
I don't really write poems now, but I do write a lot of my meditations, and I find that very therapeutic. And I think that's probably the teacher in me as well. I've
Mhm.
always got a pen or a pencil in my hand. I've always loved paper and stationery.
Mhm.
So, I think that's what comes through for me.
So it's kind of
I
like
love
your key
words.
to unlocking. I think we all have that. And I think
Yeah,
about this journey is discovering what that is for oneself. And it will be different for everyone else. Like I love to teach too. I always took students as a nurse. I developed actually
yeah.
a community nursing diploma program. I was teaching at one of our colleges
Wow.
here at the time. I've always loved teaching. I think you either do or you don't, right?
I think
So,
it's that connection, isn't it? And watching other people grow
mhm,
and giving them the tools or giving them the space to grow. And for me, I think, that whether that's children or my spiritual teaching,
mhm.
it doesn't matter. It's that, the talking of the knowledge and watching the people that you're with suddenly connect, understand, and then take off. I love watching people just taking off and
But the
flying.
one thing, have you found this? And I was having this conversation this weekend, and I've seen it. And I love that you said you worked with a variety of teachers that you mentioned in the book, because
Yeah,
I say this always. I say the biggest gift and favor you can do to yourself is to work with a variety of different
yeah,
teachers and mentors. You will learn so much more. I mean, you'll learn from one person, you've got a great teacher, but a good teacher will tell you to seek knowledge in other places rather than I'm the only
yeah,
source of knowledge.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, so when someone buys your book, because this is where I was going with, what I was eventually building up to. The number one thing people I find with meditation is I can't quiet my mind. I can't settle down. So how could somebody use your book that is wanting to get into spirituality, the spiritual field, and possibly mediumship, but also knowing, because I say meditation is our workspace. I really, really do.
Yeah.
So love to hear your thoughts on that.
So for me, meditation, it's right. I have so many different people come to me with different ways of meditating, even children. So some people love the silence and
Mhm.
they like just to connect with the sound. So I've got like singing
Yep.
bowls, reed sticks, things
Mhm.
like that. Or they like the music.
Mhm.
And some, particularly children, say, I can't bear that because then I start thinking. So they like the guided meditation. So they
Yeah.
like somebody speaking and helping them to direct their
Mhm.
thoughts. And some people, I always say to people, and funny enough, you were talking about the creativity. A lot of the time, my guides or spirit people come in is when I'm cooking. So when you're doing something that you love, whether
Yeah.
that's cooking, painting in the garden, walking in nature, that's when you're connecting
Mhm.
with your spirit guides and your loved ones and the angelic realms. So I think there's always going to be different types of meditation, and sometimes you're in the mood for different things as well.
Mhm.
So please don't think that meditation is sitting there cross-legged and kind of like,
I say those exact words, and I'm so glad. I always say when I have a guest on my show, I treat them like they're an honored guest in my home. So I'm not here to argue or cause any issues, but I have had people on here who are hardcore meditators, and they'll tell
Yeah.
you the only way to do it is to basically be in the lotus position for 2 hours or 3 hours in this position on top of a mountain, basically. And so I don't argue with them. I figure I leave that up to my audience. But Spirit gave me something a long time ago, and I say it all the time. And it's this: what you perceive becomes what you believe, and it becomes your reality.
It
So if
does.
you really believe that that's all you have to be like a
Yeah.
stone, not a thought going by, and this is how you meditate, the
Yeah.
universe shall give you exactly what you wish for. Mhm.
Absolutely. And I think, I think you need to do, because there's active, like yoga is active meditation. You're using your body, going for a
Yeah.
walk, there's active meditation as well. And I find that when I'm doing my meditation group, we start with breathing, we start with
Mhm.
connecting to the breath. And that really just kind of like gets us centered, gets us focused, closes off our monkey minds. And then I take them into a visualization, and then I allow them to be held in the space with the music, and I give the healing around the group. And so, and that's just the way that I think that's what I'd like to do, actually. So, and I just think it just gives you different ways of meditating to cover different people with different personalities, different characters, different
You got
abilities.
yours. The more I talk to you, my goodness, I think we almost like have a psychic line here, because many of the things you have said, I have said myself, and I believe that too. We are
Yeah,
so uniquely different. Not
definitely.
everybody can do things the same way. Like Mish said, gardening is an active meditation. When I was
Yes,
talking
it
about
is.
teaching and we moved a little bit further, I was going to say we always run into students who, I always say you can picture, what is it? Picture, sense, or imagine. And if you're say doing a meditation or a grounding exercise or whatever, because not everybody can visualize and see
Oh,
and
fun. Yeah,
imagine, but you'll get people sitting there that'll say, I didn't get anything. I didn't
yeah.
experience anything. And then they start to self-doubt themselves and say, you know what, I'm just not meant to be here. I guess I just don't have it. I guess I'm blocked or I'm closed off. And again, no judgment, but how do you handle those type of things with your students for people who may need to hear that out there, Alison?
So the first thing I would really reassure them is that actually it takes time and
Mhm,
practice,
mhm.
and that we all have different clairs, and we all
Right.
have stronger clairs. Some of them are stronger, and
Mhm,
so if, for example, I like to talk, so I know that and I feel people. So I know that I'm clairvoyant. I know that I'm clairsentient, and I like communication. So I like to hear. But we all have different clairs. So if you can't picture it,
mhm,
sense it, feel it. And there's definitely some kind of clair that they will be able to connect with. But the more we doubt, the more we say we can't, again, that's like the affirmation, isn't it? The more, the way that we talk to
mhm,
ourselves. So if we
mhm,
open up that possibility, or
mhm,
we relax and breathe a little bit deeper, then you get your body into that state.
mhm.
So I would always say, right, go back to the breathing, go
Yeah,
back, and just, don't force it, because if you force it,
it
then
won't
it's
happen.
going to come. So
I
get
always say
yourself
it's meant to flow like water. I'm very
absolutely.
visual, like a lot of communication from spirit for me, and it's evolved, and it always will evolve when we're working in this field. Is that they give me more like a movie. So what they've shown me is the more we try to force it, the more we want it. I've met people that are just in tears wanting it. So one in particular comes to mind, wants so deeply to communicate with animals and has tried everything 6 ways to Sunday and has
Oh,
decided that I can't do it. So the more we tell ourselves that, right? Because we're so powerful, our minds, our thoughts, and our
absolutely.
words. And they show me it's like meant to flow like water, if you will, effortlessly. And again, a lot of the things we're talking about don't come effortlessly to us as human beings, right? The trust.
Absolutely. The trust is the biggest thing, is the hardest. It's the hardest. But I also think that the more you think about it, the more you're shifting your awareness. So I always think that, and I always tell my students that, when you're connecting to the spirit world, when you've got someone's loved one, as you said, you're the medium, the channel, you just listen and let it flow and say the first thing that you get. Don't analyze it. Don't think about it. Don't try and make sense of it, because then you're getting your own brain, your own ego involved, and you're gonna get it wrong. Whereas if you just allow it to come in and come out, but that takes the trust, then it's going to be more accurate, because
I always have a guide. I always joke I have a Nagy spirit guide. I haven't said that in a long time, in the most loving of ways. So in the beginning, especially, I'd get something that would be so off base. And it was like, oh my God, I can't say that. Like, it wasn't bad. It was just like, this makes no sense. And they'd always remind me, it's not meant for you.
Yes. We're just here to offload and to be the channel, to be the communicator, to be the bridge between.
I like that. I always say male person. I don't know why, but I like bridge. I like bridge. That's a good one.
We're just a bridge. Yes.
So this is interesting, and I'm glad Michelle's got a good sense of humor, but I'm glad she shared this. So she said, I did a workshop once and had to draw what we saw, referring to meditation. And she said, I colored my page black. The teacher wasn't happy, but all I saw was black.
Yeah.
Right? Now, for somebody like that, right, if that's what you started with, never mind what you've just said, I would definitely reaffirm everything you've said. But also, I think it's so important to give ourselves grace, as well as do not compare yourself to everybody else around you. The only person you can compare yourself to is you, in the hopes that you can do at least the same, if not better, every time. And if that's what you saw was black, all right. So if you're seeing black, where can you go from that when you're there? Because everybody thinks that you have to all the thoughts have to be gone. That's why I'm so grateful that you shared so many different types of meditations that can help you get there.
I think that's brilliant. I mean, I would say, if you're seeing black, there's a depth, there's a space, there's what are you getting from the color black? What does the color black mean to you?
Yes.
Because black will mean something different to everybody else.
I have a video. I don't have a big YouTube channel, but I teach people how to make and feel energy. And there's no right or wrong answers. And I walk you through a few colors, and I ask you the questions of, what does black mean to you, for example? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? Does it have a weight? Does it have a temperature? So I feel that that's what you meant by what you were saying, right? Like, really get
absolutely. Into it. And a lot of people would think, oh, black, that's going to be like a negative color, but it's not. It's expanse, isn't it? There's the depth. So I wouldn't have said that was a negative. I wouldn't have got angry. I would have been intrigued, and
I so would have
delved deeper with that one. I'd be like, brilliant.
I'm sorry you had that experience, Michelle, but I'm glad you shared it. And Julie Jean Bassett is saying, absolutely. She's agreeing with everything we're saying. Dustin Howard said, love your smiling face, Alison. So I wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Julie said, yes, no comparison with anyone else. Everyone is different and everyone is unique. And then Z-Sun Dragon or Kevin said, black is empowering and protective.
Yes.
But I remind people, that's for you what that feels like and it means. Even when you read books, okay? And again, I'm not knocking anybody. I got 3 books in the works I need to get my butt going and getting them going here. But my point is that it's coming from a human being. Now, a human being is either feeling it, sensing it, channeling it, maybe passed down from generations, but that it's not the be all to the end all. Same thing I tell people, just because it's a doctor that tells you there's no other answers, you're done.
We all have a different interpretation, don't we? And I think that's why I always encourage my students to ditch the tarot guides and things like that, just feel the tarot, just throw the
Yeah.
guidebook away, and everybody's got, and I think I say that in my book, and I hope I do say that, but because it's always part of what I always say, this whatever resonates with you. So these are my opinions, my experiences. I'm not here to tell people what to believe. I never have. I'm not, you must do this, you must do that, this is right, this is wrong. It's always, for me, is like, if it resonates, hold on to it. If it doesn't resonate, then park it. It might resonate later, or you might have a different thought. So
I agree, because that's exactly it. I always say that: take what resonates, leave the rest, and it's okay to change your mind. Because I can tell you
absolutely.
right now, I don't believe the same things I believed 5 years ago or thought the same way. We change, we grow, we evolve, right?
We evolve. Yeah.
So, how would people use your meditations? Because I love that you shared the first two parts of the books about your own journey. You said this is the book that you always wish that was out there for other people, which I love, because it's a good place to start. So, like,
Yes.
I'm just trying to get a better idea for people about the meditations, because a meditation really does scare a lot of people. So I'm glad you've shared your thoughts on it, because I am totally concurring. There's many different ways to get to that state.
Yeah, definitely. I think meditation is a great way just to find the peace and calm within. It's like a little gift that you can give yourself, just to take a pause out of your day,
Mhm.
just to feel, as I say, feel. I think there's a couple in there that, you're grounding one. There's one about protection. There's one about opening up. There's different types that, again, for me, as I said, it's like a practical guide to spirituality. It's like, it's a guide. It's not a Bible. It's not, it's tips and things that I've learned along the way, things that I use in my teaching. And for me, I hope it's a book that you might dip in and out of, rather than sit and read all of it at once. It's kind of like, if you're interested in angels, read the bit on angels. If you like crystals, read the bit in crystals, and if you're not ready for crystals yet, then don't read it until you find crystals, if you find crystals. So I think, there's a few little, and I didn't want the meditations to be really long. I mean, you can record them if you
Yeah.
want, and put them to your own voice, or get somebody else to read it to you, or just read it and then just visualize it yourself. They're very basic. I think the for me, and for everything that I do and everything that I've learned, it has to make sense. If it's too complicated, if it's too wordy, you get lost. Make it simple, make it accessible, and then just allow your imagination to take. So I'll take you into a garden, and I'll just ask you to, the smells, the sights, the feelings that you have, using your senses. So I'm not saying, focus on a flower, focus on this, focus on, it's like, use your creativity and your imagination in your mind. So it's, they're guides. It's a guide, really.
Like I said, I don't have a big YouTube channel, but I have some teaching videos. If you guys go to the video tab and scroll down, and one of them is how to create a love shield, because we run into people. I think most of us doing this with our empaths, but you run into people, my own son included. I was even going to ask you about your boys, if you've noticed gifts in them, because I definitely, my boys, ever since they were little, but my eldest in particular, and he's just turned 29. So I don't see him as often. He's engaged and has a house. And I always say, I'm not going to be a pain in the butt mother. You know where I live. I think of you all the time, but I'm not calling you 10 times a day. So we communicate via messenger and stuff. But where I'm going with this, every now and then we'll go to the mall, for example. And he's a pretty funny, easygoing kind of guy. And we'll be there, and he'll start getting really snippy and cranky. And I'll be like, what's with, oh yeah, you can't be in a mall, because he picks up on everything. So is there a little bit about that in the book? Because I was having this conversation this weekend with somebody that was empathic. And I say, it's all about how we look at that, because you'll hear people say it's a curse. And I said, how about turning that around, that it's a superpower? When people are lying to you, you can feel things. Do you cover things like that too, Alison, in the book?
I do cover a couple of topics that are kind of like quite close. So one of them is about, children that don't survive. There's about reincarnation.
Not that they didn't survive, but that you cover it.
No, yes. But these again are my understandings. you know. And like, there's a little bit there about you know, one lady came to me about her daughter who was, you know, getting like poltergeist energies.
I'm glad
And
you brought that up. I was going to ask you about stuff like that. Yeah.
and again, you know, for me, it's about the energy and about protecting ourselves, but also about the way that we are in our minds. So what we are and who we are, we create that energy. So if we are low or negative, or, you know, we're going to create a lot of that energy. I feel that's, again,
I
these are
think
my
some of the
thoughts.
most powerful human beings on the planet are prepubescent to early teenage, especially
Yeah,
females,
yeah,
because of the hormones, the age, the
yeah,
energy.
yeah,
And believe it or not, I know somebody whose daughter was having terrible poltergeist activity while mom was at work, and mom's in this field as well. And lo and behold, they were able to find out it was her creating it, in
yeah.
the way of, not on purpose, of course,
No,
but
no, 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 no.
being very telekinetic, or for people listening, to be able to actually, through her emotions and the power of the energy, to be able to move things. Like when she was angry, she was really angry. When she
Yeah.
was sad, she was really sad. So it sounds like sort of that's what the book is talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, definitely, and that's, you know, I talk a little bit about that. So I, you know, I try and cover. It's not all love and, you know, light. There
Um,
are other topics in there that, you know, and nitty gritty. And there's things that people will probably read and think, well, that's not what I believe. But I'm always trying to see a positive in something. Do you see what I mean? But I do recognize that there's that duality. So there is the light and the dark, and we do need to
I
talk
agree.
about those. We do need to talk about those topics as well. So a little bit like there's a little bit on suicide there, you know. So why do people take their lives? Why do they go back? And sometimes I say to, you know, maybe they just felt that they came down too soon. They didn't have the tools that they needed in this particular life, or maybe it just became too much. They took on too much karma and they couldn't work it, you know. And some people might not like that kind of topic, but I think it's important to try and understand and at least put it out there on the table, just to for
I
discussion.
agree, because I call what we do the paranormal. Everything that I always say paranormal is basically not what's in everybody's wheelhouse considered to be within the norm. Not that the
Yeah,
norm or normal is able to be measured. I also have a saying too that I always say, what people think is the normal is actually the paranormal, and the
yeah,
paranormal, or the odd or rare, is actually the norm, because the more and more we talk about it, the
yeah.
more we see it. Now, have you ever found the website channelingeric.com?
No, but I'm
Okay.
going to.
Okay. She has his mama Lisa has a YouTube channel. She's gotten more into Atlantis scalar healing, but in the beginning, she has 5 children, and Eric was her third child. And as he came out of middle school, we'll say, getting into high school, he developed Tourette's syndrome and severe bipolar that was not responsive to medication. Long story short, he took his life at 21 years of age. Now, Elise is a doctor, a cardiologist. Her parents were doctors over in Europe, and the belief was, the whole family believed that they were atheists. Nothing existed beyond life. What ended up happening was Eric started coming back to all of them. He had very distinctive things. He's a real trickster, like Joker. So
Yeah,
they'd
yeah.
smell his stinky socks. They'd smell the green stuff that he smoked, or he would show himself. But I think the big convincer, if I remember correctly, that Elisa shared, her father, who was a staunch atheist, very serious, no nonsense
Yeah.
physician, he called her and he said, "I think I'm losing my mind." And she said, "Well, what do you mean?" And this was a couple weeks after Eric passed. And he said, "Eric just appeared to me. At the age, he would have been around 4 years of age. And he crawled up in my lap. He took my face in his hands and he kissed me on the cheek. And he said, 'I love you, Papa.' And then he was gone." So Elisa started thinking, what is going on here? Why are we seeing this stuff if there's no afterlife? Long story short, I like the old stuff. She actually asked me to do a guest mediumship, and I just didn't feel
Oh,
confident enough. This was quite a few years ago, and I really appreciate that she did. But she always had Jamie Butler, and she never accepted a penny out of anybody, and ended up having many conversations with Eric on the other side. Eric would bring people through. Like when I listened to the interview on autism, and I'm not an easy crier. Oh my God, it was a blubbering mess. And then, like, she's interviewed, and this is where the controversy comes in, Jesus and Mother
okay.
Mary, and there's been celebrities and what have you. And I think it holds a little bit more credence that she never took a penny from people. She always paid out of her own pocket. And then Jamie, she's a beautiful medium over in the US and has her own practice now. So she stepped down. So she uses quite a few different mediums. But it is fascinating to see her journey. And I welcome anybody who has not heard of them to check her website out.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
I will, definitely. But doesn't that go to show that, we all have a purpose here, and sometimes he has fulfilled his purpose, and as he
Again,
as he
mhm.
as he goes back home, part of what he was here to do was to open them up spiritually, you
And
know?
as well, he now again, can we be 100% sure? And they've used many different mediums, but yes, exactly what you said. This
Yeah.
was he had built this in. He knew he was only going to be here for a short time, what
Oh,
his role was, and he shares what he's doing on the other side. And apparently, he is working on eventually becoming a spirit guide. And nobody knows, is he going to have
oh,
another
lovely. That's
lifetime?
what I want to be. I want to be
I
that.
know, I know. So, but he gets into that and talks about a little bit about what's behind it and, past anything we would want to ask or think about. And again,
Mm,
this is one person's perspective sharing it through a medium. And again, it was always the same medium. Now it's many different
mm.
mediums. So take
That's
a
amazing in itself, because he can then get more coverage.
He's shown up at
As
my
as we
house
said
and let
as we said
me know.
earlier, there's different mediums for different people, so he can, yeah, he
He's
can
shown up
spread.
he's shown up in my home before, and every now and then, not very often in this home, but in my previous home where I had all the activity, oh yeah, because I'd smell his green stuff that he used to love to smoke. I can't say on air that nobody in our house partook of that, and it would just show up out of nowhere, the smell. And he's
Oh,
like, "Is that you,
yeah.
Eric?"
Oh, definitely going to look that up, definitely. I love things like that.
Okay, so we got a question from Michelle. Did you have a bad day or did you have 10, 20 minutes where your thoughts ran undisciplined? Are you referring to meditation, Michelle? Is that what you're talking about? We'll have to see if that's what she's talking about. She'll put it in there. And hello, Michelle Kleckler Cap. She dropped in. And Diane Brighton shares while we're waiting for Michelle to answer. She says, for most I spoke to from the dead, unalive due to lack of love. That may be your experience. There's many, many reasons why, and I don't think any of us will really know what all those reasons are
Mm,
because they're very individual and personal to the people that
yeah.
this happened to. Would you agree?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Hmm. I'm not quite sure what Michelle meant. She said, just popped up in my feed. Or maybe she's just sharing something. I might have missed that. And then she said, kind of just thinking in probably a typo. She said, and Gerald. So let me go back and see if we're missing any comments. What else would you like to share about the book? Because I just love, you're the first person I've run into that is actually considered how powerful it is for children to learn to meditate. That's my dream, that every child learns this at the beginning. My eldest actually, when he got his black belt in Taekwondo, but part of it with the master, he had a master from that just happened to move to our city from
Yeah.
Korea, and he would get them to meditate and do all this stuff. And I'd ask my son, "Do you even know what meditation is?" And he'd say, "No." And I'd say, "Well, what do you do?" Well, you gotta sit there for 20 minutes because I just sit and I breathe. Oh,
It's
she's
a
like,
really good way to focus the mind. It
okay.
is a very good way to focus the mind. But I feel like for me, it's, the children I just think everybody needs that pause, that grounding. The
Mhm.
world goes fast the world goes past so quickly, and there's so much going in, there's so much stimulation everywhere, that we all get caught up, and we all believe different things because we see them, we hear them. Whereas, and that's when we become, anxious or worried, or we start comparing. If you can just pause and, go in and listen to what you feel and what you're being told from within, that's really powerful. So that you're listening to your body, you're listening to yourself. And if we can lower our heart rate, and let the adrenaline to settle, then we can start responding in a different way. So a lot of the time that, children who are angry is because the adrenaline is racing around their bodies. So if they learn the art of breathing, if they learn the art of just sitting still and listening to music, or listening to a guided meditation, or going for a walk and just connecting within, it lowers that kind of fight or flight response. And as they go through their day, as they go through their lives, they're able to, respond in a different way. So for the emotions, I think it's really important. It just brings that sense of calm and peace.
No, I think you're I mean that the first person I have heard that has looked at
Yeah,
meditation for children. And I think that when we learn it in childhood, it becomes
absolutely.
natural,
Yeah,
normal, and part of your everyday coping toolbox as we get older, because life gets more complicated. We get
yeah,
pulled in more directions. The other thing you said that is so powerful, and I'm not disrespecting the Bible, but I call this book my Bible, The Secret Language of Your Body
yeah,
by Ina Segal, because she teaches people how to heal with energy, with
yeah,
color,
yeah.
working with the emotions. But I love
Yes.
that it breaks down by body system. And it will
Right.
also break down by various different diagnoses people will have. And it will
Yeah.
tell you what the emotional, spiritual, or possible traumatic
I
issue that
love
you're
that.
dealing with, because our bodies will give us the answers if we ask, but we've never been taught to listen, haven't we?
No, that's right. So if we can find that space to tap into ourselves and to listen to our body and to feel where we've got perhaps blockages or where things are stuck. And I think that's like whatever healer, no matter what modality you're using, what they do is they'll always say that, your energy, your aura will reflect what's going on. So if we can get in through the aura and into the body, then we know that we are depleted at some point. So the understanding is to keep our aura big, to keep our energy healthy. And it is like hygiene, isn't it? We brush our teeth and
Absolutely.
things, keep our energy healthy, and then we're less likely for it all to penetrate into the body. And I think for me, it was like, is it Louise Hay that, healed the
Yes,
body?
yes, Louise Hay, yeah, yeah.
She was the first person that
Body.
I understood. Yeah, she got me to understand that, that, a headache or a sore throat could be something to do with not being able to communicate or holding on to your emotions. Our bodies will tell us what's
And you
going
can ask, like, if for anybody listening, I always tell them, if you can even do it just for a minute, take a couple very good deep breaths through your nose and out your mouth. And then if, say, you've got a stomach pain, you can ask your stomach, whatever you want to refer to your stomach as, and say, why are you hurting? What are you trying to tell me? I always say pain is the body's language. It's
on. Yeah,
its communication system. And then I have another, I don't know where it is. When I was in nursing to learn all the insides and outs and nerves and everything of the body, I had the anatomy coloring book. And I'm a big proponent of that. Using different parts of the brain can sometimes help us learn and retain. So I have an energetic coloring book. And it made
wow.
much sense to me with the fact that, there's a reason why acupuncture and acupressure works. And I really believe in the fact with the ki or chi lines, the
Yes.
way I look at it is, when we have, it could be physical, emotional, spiritual, could be trauma, whatever it is, and everything's energy. If we don't process it and we swallow it down, or we hang on to it and we don't deal with it and release it, right? Then it
Yeah.
eventually stagnates and turns into what we could call dis-ease. And you're very right about what you said about the aura. And so that's how you start to learn how to process it and release it. But our bodies really will tell us what's wrong.
And that's what we call the healing crisis as well. So when you have somebody and you're working with them and you're healing and you're helping, and I always say, healing is not magic. I'm not here to like suddenly cure you, but what you do is you move the energy around. So that stagnation that you're talking about, you're moving it and you're getting it to, just like a reflexologist would do on the feet and things. You're moving that energy around, and it will bring your emotions to the surface, because it has to come out at some point, doesn't it? So it may come out as tears, it may come out, in different ways. But that's good. It's about releasing it, because we hold on to so much without realizing.
We do. So I'm going to share Michelle's comment. Michelle, you never have to say sorry. You know that. This is a wonderful. She said she was sorry, but the thought she had shared, and she explained, because Kevin says above, yummy morsels of thought, and this is why he said it, because what she had said before, and I didn't quite understand. She said sometimes your thinking is silly and your actions, but sometimes it's hard to stop. It's wrong, but is it really wrong? This is a safe space. And if you felt you needed to express what you need to express, who did you hurt? Nobody, right?
But also it's like when you're doing mediumship, there is no, I always say to the people I'm reading for, if it's right, brilliant. If it's wrong, please let me know, because I can go back and I can check, because it's bound to be my communication with whoever I'm linking into. So I always, and I used to say this in my classroom as well, we learn through mistakes, we learn through doing things. It brings it up for a discussion. So there's never anything wrong, never. It's an open communication.
I always ask I give them the opportunity, and if they don't know how, I will help them find it. But I ask them if they would be open to recording the sessions they have with me, because there's so much information that comes through. People are sitting there, oh, I gotta write this down, I gotta write it down, no, just sit back, please, and
listen.
Enjoy and listen. And there's going to be things, there could be, and again, we need to check in frequently as mediums to say, does that resonate? Does that make sense? And then they can go back. I always tell them, because I said there's going to be things more than likely that'll come through, and I tell them I'm not always 100% correct. Nobody is. So I tell them that there'll be things that may come through that'll make no sense to you now, that it'll be 3:00 in the morning a week from now, and it'll hit you, or you'll be talking to a family member or whatever. Or maybe you choose to rewatch this session 6 months from now or a year, and suddenly it'll all make sense.
Yeah, because you're not in the right space at the right time, at that particular time, and that things evolve and things, things do come up. No, I think that's really important.
Would you believe we are out of time? We got about 5 minutes left. How fast. I hope that I'm going to put you on the spot, Alison, but I hope you will come back on. I really enjoyed having you on tonight.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you. I can't believe the time. So
I told you before we started how fast it was going to go. I knew we had so much to talk about.
I know. It's been amazing. Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. And all the interactions as well, all the questions. That's lovely.
So where can people buy your books? How can they get a hold of you? Any social media platforms, anything you've got coming up, please share with us.
Oh, thank you. So I think you can buy my book for Collective, the 6 books, or you can buy it on Amazon. I think they're kind of like the 2 main places. I do have a website, AlisonGreyMedium.com. Facebook, I'm under, it's called Spiritual Insights.
That's why I couldn't find you. I even went to 6 Collective because I was trying to tag you. Okay, so that's
so it's Spiritual Insights. That's my spiritual kind of page.
Okay.
And then Instagram is just Alison Grey Medium.
Because I promoted this everywhere. I usually do, and I was going to tag you, and I was looking, and I was going to get you all over.
You know what it was is that I set it up as a closed group, and I think once you've done that with Facebook, you can't open it up publicly. If anybody knows how to do that, they can tell me how to do that. Because
I have 3 groups on Facebook, and they're all private. And and I'm pretty tech savvy. I have no idea how to
No, I don't know how to do it, but I know that if you find me, it's under Spiritual Insights.
Okay. Well, that is so
Yeah.
awesome. When you run your sessions and teaching and stuff, do you offer it online or is it just in person?
No, I do it online. I do a lot on Zoom as well.
Okay.
So I run a development circle on Zoom, and I do a one here in Oxfordshire where I'm based.
Okay.
And I do lots of readings kind of like around the world, different places. And that's all on Zoom as well. So yeah, you can either, if you live nearby, you can pop in. If not, it's always on Zoom or somewhere like that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
so awesome. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for being
you. I've
here.
really enjoyed it. Thank
People
you.
are enjoying. Everybody's going, great show. Amazing. Thank you both. Michelle said, thanks. Great show. Kevin said, great show. And guests, everybody's just loving you. So I know when I get lots of comments like that, they enjoy who's on. And I know they're going to love to have you back on again.
Oh,
I
it's
think
a
we're
pleasure.
booking into the end of September or of October. Maybe that might be a good. I'll send you the calendar link again. You can pick whenever, but I'd love
Brilliant.
to
I'd love that. Thank you.
chat.
Chat all
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah, Julie says, Julie Jean Bassett, great show. So I want to tell you guys, so we're at the end of the show, so stay tuned. I don't know if we have somebody new up after me. I'm going to have to check. We used to, but they've since left the network, but there could be somebody new there and I'm not aware of it yet. But stay tuned because I believe there's a show after the 1 hour show that was after me. So check it all out and don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. If you ever want to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me on facebook.com/the Angel Rock. As I've been telling you, still working on it, looking for a web designer and stuff. My partner Dal says, I didn't know his cousin does this, so I'm going to try and connect with her because I'm getting busier and busier, and it'll be just so much easier to go to a one-stop shop to be able to book the reading, pay for it, and away we go. So that's coming. But I still have the Facebook page where I do most of my business right now, or just get a hold of me on social media. I'm on every platform you can think of under Lorilei Potvin or the Angel Rock. Fastest and quickest way is through Facebook Messenger. I have 2 groups on Facebook, Paranormal University for all things paranormal, the Angel Rocker Tribe for more things spiritual. And don't forget, you guys are going to see Dave and I on Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the thing at the foot of the bed. And you guys, we said when we get to 200 people in our group, and it's pretty new, it's the thing at the foot of the bed. When we get to 200, David and I are going to start going live in there, doing free 1-question readings from time to time, or just hanging out with all of you. And it's actually, I checked today, I think I said 113 or 115. So we're getting there, you guys. So that's the magic number, 200. Otherwise, I will be back next week. I think it's next week. I think our guests, they are over in Europe too. So I think we're going to do a pre-record earlier in the day. So you guys will not have seen the show. And but it'll be a brand new show. But just because it's too late for them to stay up, and I completely understand. So, but I think it's next week. I'm just giving you a heads up. Anyways, you guys, I love y'all. Sending you so much love and light. We'll see you Thursday. And then again, same time, same space next week on Monday. Thanks again, Alison.
Thank you.
Have a good
Pleasure.
one, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Oh, Kevin's going, is the light gate up next? I don't know, Kevin. You know what? Check on Facebook on UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network. And you're probably right. It probably is. You probably know much better than me. So thank you. I appreciate that.